Alrighty. Well, you're in the right place if you are ready to learn about nutrition and how to fuel your body well for all of your training that you've been doing and for the race coming up. So, I want to just share a little bit about me first. I live right in Richmond too. I am a Richmond runner, so maybe you've seen me running. I've run the Richmond Marathon a few times. I am on one of the half marathon training teams this year, so I'm really excited about that. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm a personal trainer, a run coach, so I love to help runners on the training side of things and on the nutrition side of things. And I'm founder of the Dietitian Runner, which is my business. So it's my coaching business. And as I said, I help runners with their training and I help them with their nutrition. So I'm going to dive right in. I only get to talk to you guys once a year, and I have a lot to share with you, but I'm trying to keep it like simple and to the point. But I want to get started because I have a lot of different things to share. So today I want to cover the three main pillars, I call them, of runner's nutrition: your mindset, your daily nutrition, and running and racing nutrition. So what to eat before running, before racing, during, and then after. So we're actually going to cover all of those three areas today. So to start off with your mindset, and you might be thinking, okay, why is this dietitian talking about mindset? And it is because your mindset is so important. How you think about food, how your food beliefs, it determines how you go about fueling your body and your food choices. Right now, you are training for a half marathon, right? You're asking your body to go out there to do a lot every single day, and then there's all the things that you do in your daily life, right? So your body needs all the nutrition that it can get right now. We want to avoid restriction. We want to avoid dieting. We want to avoid intentional weight loss right now since you're training for your race. I want you to think of food as something that will help you. A lot of times we think of food as something, we might be working against it or we might be afraid of food, but food is actually something that is going to help you feel good, be the best version of you, and help you train well this summer and help you race well this fall. Now, when we are restricting, when we're dieting, we're going to set ourselves up for a lot of these things here. Here are all the consequences of not meeting your nutrition needs, especially when you're training. Deficiencies, low energy availability, it can affect your muscles and your bones, it can increase your injury risk, and you've worked too hard to set yourself up to get injured. It can affect your immune function, your brain function. I mean, you can read the rest. So, to avoid all of these things, we want to fuel our body and fuel our body really darn well. So instead of thinking about, okay, I can't have this, I can't have this, I should avoid these foods, that's not helpful and that's not going to set you up well. What I want you to start thinking about is an optimization mindset, a fueling mindset. So, what that really means is you're looking at your nutrition and you're trying to add as many nutrients as possible to your meals and to your snacks. We're not thinking about subtracting, we're not thinking about taking away, we're thinking about adding and giving your body all the nutrients that it needs to keep up with all the things you ask it to do on a daily basis. Find your balance of your nutrient dense whole foods and your foods for the soul. An example of food for the soul for me is ice cream. I focus on lots of nutrient dense foods at my meals and snacks, but I also make room to include some of those foods for the soul. Avoiding all or nothing mentality. So that means, like, here's an example. Okay, this week I'm going to be really, really good. And then when you eat something you're not supposed to, you're all out and it doesn't matter anymore, right? We want to avoid that way of thinking. We want to avoid aiming for perfect nutrition because we are humans, we're not perfect, and we shouldn't expect our nutrition to be either. And I tell my runners this all the time. If you're aiming for perfect with your nutrition, you're going to fail because there's no such thing. So find your balance, right? Avoid getting trapped in that restrict binge cycle. So that's when you tell yourself you can't have something like cookies, right? And then all you do is think about those cookies that you just restricted. And then when you finally give in and have a cookie, you probably just can't eat one. You probably eat a lot of cookies. Then you feel physically bad. Maybe your stomach probably hurts. You feel guilty, and then you go back to restricting cookies and you go around and around and around again. The last thing I want you to get out of the habit of, if you're in the habit of categorizing food as good and bad. A lot of times we refer to ourselves as being good when we eat good foods and bad when we eat bad foods. And you are a good human no matter what you eat. Food has no moral value. I'm going to try not to clear my throat too much, but I feel like I'm losing my voice or something. So bear with me. Now, some things to get used to as a half marathoner. And when I started running long distances, it took me a little bit to adjust to eating more and more often than others, especially our non-running friends, our non-running families, eating a lot of carbs at meals and snacks when carbs are really demonized in our society, right? So it takes a lot to, or it can take a lot to get used to eating carbohydrates and kind of ignore all the noise and ignore what everyone else is doing around you. Drinking sugar in your sports products and gels, there's a reason why it's there, and we'll talk about it when we get to that point today. And I want you to think of yourself as a unique individual, a unique person. You're not a normal person, you're a runner, and your nutrition needs are very unique. So do what you got to do to fuel your body well, to ignore and kind of shut down what everyone else is doing around you so that you can take care of you and run strong and meet all of the goals that you set out to meet. With that being said, listening to your body and honoring things like your hunger and your fullness and eating foods that taste good and are satisfying to you, all those things are really important. But understand that as a runner, might be times when you don't feel hungry. And this is a picture of me from, gosh, I think I was training for the Richmond Marathon, and it was after a really long, hot, sweaty run. And I really wasn't hungry, but the only thing that sounded good was pizza, so I ate some pizza. So after a run is a great example of when you might not feel hungry, but you want to eat anyway. Before an early morning workout, I don't know about you, but I never feel like eating before morning runs. But I do it because that's how I can support my energy and have a good workout and train well so that I can race well. During a long runner race, who wants to take a gel, right? Who wants to drink a sports drink? But we do so because we need to do that. We don't necessarily want to feel hungry during long runs and races, but we want to fuel without feeling hungry, right? If it's been about 4 hours since your last meal or snack, when we get into like the 5, 6, 7 hours without eating, that's way too long. You're setting yourself up for getting ravenous, hangry, and mean to others around you. So let's avoid all of that and fuel frequently throughout the day. And another example is during a carb load, we want to fuel with carbs. We want to sometimes eat when we don't feel hungry during a carb load. Now, when it comes to your daily nutrition, this is a really great place for you to start, because if we're skipping over daily nutrition and we're only focusing on what we're eating right before, during, and after running, yet we might have all these gaps in our daily nutrition, it's not going to really make a huge difference to your performance if you're only focusing on the before, during, and after run nutrition. You need to really focus on daily nutrition and filling those gaps first. So today we're going to chat through all of these pieces here. So to help you set up your plate, this is a runner's plate framework that I use, and I teach my clients how to, one, set up a balanced plate, and then how to adjust their plate based on what their exercise looks like. I want to tell you that, you're into your training now, right? And your training is only going to ramp up. How you're eating in the beginning of training should not look the same as you're eating when you're in peak week and running all of the miles. If you are, you probably are under fueling and you're not setting yourself up very well. So let's look at these runner's plates here. And I know this is really small, so hopefully you can read this, but there are 4 parts on all of these plates. There is your grain and starch section, your protein sections down here, your color, which is your fruit, your vegetables, and then your source of fat. Those 4 parts remain consistent throughout all these plates. Now, the thing that changes the most throughout all of these plates is our grain and starch section and the color section. Fat and protein remain relatively the same. So let's look at this easy training plate over here on the left. You see that a quarter of it is your grain or starch, in this case, the potato. A quarter of it is your protein. Let me move myself out of the way. Okay, a quarter of it is protein, which is our salmon. We have our color, which is our salad, half of the plate there. And then our source of fat, we have some walnuts on here, we have some avocado, and salmon provides us some heart-healthy fats as well. Now, this easy training plate is something you should not be following right now because you are in a training cycle and it's going to cause underfueling. This plate doesn't have enough of our carb-rich foods, our grains and starches, when you're training for a race. So this is a good plate for the off season. Maybe if you do like a 20 to 30 minute easy effort run or a walk or yoga, something kind of light. Maybe you're in the off season and just completely taking a break from exercise. So that is a plate you should be following at that time. And I don't want you to follow that plate right now. Now, this moderate training plate, the one that you see in the middle, this is appropriate for when you're in a training cycle. And I would say if you're doing on average like 30 to 60 minutes of easy effort exercise, this is what your plate should look like. Now, you'll notice the main differences between the easy plate and the moderate plate is the grain and starch section. We're doing more exercise, so we need more carbohydrates because they provide us energy, and we need extra energy when we are doing more activity, right? So we need to make more room for these grains and starches, our carb-rich foods, and we actually want to increase that to about a third of the plate. Protein remains relatively consistent, fat remains relatively consistent, and then we can cut that color a little bit just to make room for the extra grains and starches. Now let's jump to our last plate, which is the hard training plate. Now this is appropriate for when you are in a training cycle. So both the moderate and the hard plate, you might find that you're using a mix of them. And at some point you may find that you're just using that hard training plate. That's appropriate for when you're doing about an hour or more of easy effort exercise. Or let's say you have a 45-minute run with some speed work in the middle of that. This would be a good plate for that. Also before and after long runs. A long run, I consider anything over 60 minutes. So we can count that. Now, again, you're doing more activity, right? You're doing more exercise. So we need to eat more carbs so that our nutrition and our carbohydrates will align with our exercise. So we want to actually fill half of our plate with our grains and starches. Protein, again, relatively the same. Fat is pretty consistent, and we can decrease color to about a quarter of the plate just to make room for those extra grains and starches. What I encourage you to do is take a look at your training week, and this is where planning ahead can be very helpful. Making sure, of course, you have the groceries and all of that too to be able to build out these plates. But what I encourage you to do is look ahead at your week. Maybe, and I feel like this is what my exercise looks like now, maybe you're doing about 30 to 60 minutes during the week, like Monday through Friday. This moderate training plate would be a good thing to follow for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all week long. If you have a rest day, let's say on a Tuesday, we are not dropping down to that easy training plate because why do we rest? We take rest days to help our body repair, replenish, rebuild, so that way we can head out the next day and kick butt in our training, right? So rest days, moderate training plate would probably be a good idea. But let's say your long runs are becoming over an hour on the weekends, and let's say your long run is on Saturday. So you could follow the moderate training plate all week long, and then that Friday, that whole day before your long run, you would switch to this hard training plate and have that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Saturday, you'd wake up, hopefully fuel before you run, fuel during your run, and then afterwards follow that hard training plate for the rest of the day. This plate is going to give you enough carb to optimize your glycogen stores, which you'll learn about to help you feel good and run strong during your long training runs. And also, this plate's going to provide you with carb, again, to really help you replenish those glycogen stores, which are probably going to be depleted after your long run. So we're going to cover glycogen stores. I'm not just throwing around that fancy word once. So again, you might find that you use a mixture of these plates. There are three major parts of your nutrition. There are three major needs of your body, I should say, that increase when your training duration and intensity increase. Your daily carbohydrate needs, your daily calorie needs, your daily fluid needs. So we need to make sure, and these plates will help you do just that, that as we're putting in more work and we're doing more exercise each day, we want to make sure that we're eating enough calories, we're increasing our calories, our carbs, we're drinking more fluid so that we're not dehydrated, we're not underfueled, our energy's not suffering. We don't feel like we need to eat everything but the kitchen sink at night. We're not going to hit the wall during training runs and races. So just some things to keep in mind, especially as your miles build. So to help you meet your daily calorie needs or your increased calorie needs when you increase your training is honor your hunger. Hunger is not a bad thing. It drives me crazy when I read these nutrition articles and it's like, if you're hungry, go for a walk. If you're hungry, drink some water. If you're hungry, call your friend. And it's like, no, your body's telling you that it's hungry. It's sending that signal to you, and we should honor that by eating. Eating more at meals, you might find that you're hungrier and need more at meals. That's okay. Adding in and eating more snacks in between meals, that's okay too. To meet your increased carb needs, follow that runner's plates framework that I just showed you, and I'll soon show you my runner snacks framework. That will help you build balanced snacks in addition to your meals. And then your fluid needs are probably going to be increased with the more exercise you do because you're probably going to be sweating more. So we want to be intentional about drinking extra fluid, sipping throughout the day. More to come on that. Okay, here we are at snacks. And snacks get a very, very bad rap, but snacks are really helpful for runners. Again, you are unique. You're not a normal person. Snacks are helpful for you to meet your needs. So we're going to talk about two different types of snacks today. One is a snack within the hour of exercise, and the second one is snacks away from exercise. So if you are at work and you need like a morning snack, that's not right before exercise, right? So we'll talk about that because what to have at that snack and what nutrients to include really depends on what type of snack that is. Snacks within the hour of exercise. So let's say we wake up at 5 a.m. and we plan to run at 5:30, 5:45, right? We don't have that long to digest, but we don't want to go and do our run without any fuel because that's not going to help our body. That's not going to help us meet our goals. There's actually lots of harms of running fasted, so we don't need to go down that slippery slope. We want to fuel all of our runs. But we can't eat a big meal, right? Because you don't have a lot of time to digest, and all that food sitting in your stomach on that run's going to feel horrible, and you could have GI issues, right? No one wants to try to find a bathroom in the middle of a run. So what you can do is choose low fiber carbohydrates. Here are some examples that I listed here. These are very quick to digest because they don't have fiber. Fiber slows digestion, so we don't want to be eating a bunch of fiber or really high fiber cereal when we don't have a lot of time to digest. And your body will be able to convert these to energy quickly that your body can use on the run. Now, snacks away from exercise look a little bit different. We want to choose carb, protein, and color. I'm going to say this again. You're a runner. You're unique. So are your nutrition needs. You have higher daily carbohydrate and protein needs compared to a sedentary normal person, right? Your body needs carbs to recover. Your body needs carbs to support your brain and your ability to think and to think clearly. Also for energy, like we talked about. Your body needs that protein and extra protein for muscle recovery, repair. And then color is our fruits and our veggies, micronutrient rich, that's a fancy word for vitamins and minerals, and fiber, which can help keep us fuller longer and hold us over till that next meal. And I know you all love examples, so here are lots of examples. So we have cottage cheese and apple slices, a protein bar, it's an RX bar, and mango slices, dried mango. We have crackers and a turkey stick and some peppers. We have a tuna packet down here, number 4. We have some, I always forget the name of these. Let's call them crackers. I want to call it a baguette, but it's not a baguette. It's like a dried baguette. We'll call them crackers. And then carrots, and then we have some Greek yogurt. You can make a little parfait, Greek yogurt, blueberries, and we have granola. 6, you're probably thinking, what the heck is that? It's dried edamame, which is a really good protein source, plant-based protein as well. And then we have some pineapple. Snacks can be, and keep this in mind, snacks can be in response to hunger. So if we're hungry in between meals, it's okay to have a snack. Focus on this runner's snack framework that I'm giving you today. Snacks can also be practical, meaning that you might not feel physically hungry, you might not have a rumbling stomach, but you know you should probably have a snack. A really good example of this is people typically go way too long without eating in between lunch and dinner. So if you realize you're going 5, 6, 7 hours, 8 hours, even some runners have gone, the runners that I've worked with, without eating, that is way too long. And I bet you're getting home and you just want to eat everything that you can find, right? Like you're so ravenous, it's urgent, like you need to eat now. So a good idea could be to put a snack in there in the afternoon and eat that even if you're not hungry, because you're avoiding going a long period of time without eating. You're giving your body the energy that it needs to get through the rest of your day and hold you over till dinner. So we have 3 essential macronutrients, and those are fat, protein, and carb. Alcohol is also a macronutrient, but it is not essential. We're not going to talk about alcohol today. We need all 3 of these, especially as runners. We don't need to be afraid of fat. We don't need to be afraid of carb. And there's lots and lots of myths and misconceptions about carbs. So I really want to focus on carbs today. But know that fat and protein are also extremely important. Carbohydrates is our body's preferred source of fuel. So when we eat carbs, we use it for energy. And this is a very simple explanation, but we use it for energy and we store it as glycogen in our liver and in our muscles. And the purpose of that glycogen we store in our liver is to regulate our blood sugar levels so that when we are, for example, sleeping at night, right? Like we're fasting, we're not eating, we're sleeping. It prevents our body and our glucose levels from dropping dangerously low. Our muscle glycogen, think of that as your energy tank or your energy stores. And especially when we're running, we're going to be pulling from these stores to use as energy. We can store around 300 to 400 grams in our muscles. If we are eating enough carbs, including carbs at our snacks, we're meeting our needs. If we are doing what we can to fully optimize our glycogen stores, especially going into a run, our stores during that run typically get depleted or exhaust around an hour and a half to 2 hours into the run. So we want to make sure, and we'll get to this, we want to make sure that in addition to eating lots of carbs before runs, we're also fueling with carbs during long runs and races, but we'll get to that. So let's see. So think about your muscle glycogen stores as the fuel tank in your car. And what I want you to remind yourself is before you go out on, let's say, like a long road trip, you stop at the gas station and fill up your tank, right? Because how can you expect you to run on empty or you to drive on empty and get to your destination without any issues, right? Our body is the same way. We're taking it out for a long run, so we need to fill up the tank by eating our carbohydrates. Let's look at these 2 guys here. We have this guy on the left, and he's not eating enough carb. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it's an unintentional, maybe he's just not aware of his carbohydrate needs as a runner, but he's not eating enough carbs, and look at how low his glycogen stores are. Then we see this guy over here on the right. He's eating his carbohydrates. He is following my runner's plates and snacks framework. He's getting all those in, and look at how optimized and full his glycogen stores are. This guy over here is going to be able to probably run and feel a whole lot better. He's going to have postponed fatigue. His chances of hitting the wall during running are going to be low. And this guy's probably going to poop out a lot sooner than this guy, and he's probably going to have a really hard time keeping up with this guy. So just kind of an analogy that I wanted to look at. Carbs support your brain. And usually when I tell runners this, they're like shocked by it, but your brain alone uses at least 130 grams a day. And this is what that looks like. So 130 grams looks like 2 pieces of bread, plus a banana, plus a cup of rice, plus a handful of pretzels. And that's only your brain. So a lot of times runners don't really realize how high their carbohydrate needs are. Carbohydrates also protect us from injury and decrease our injury risk. When we are eating enough carbohydrates, we're giving it the type of fuel that it needs to do its thing, right? When we're not eating enough carbohydrates, our body is smart. Like, we don't keel over and die typically. What happens is the body will look within itself for another source of fuel. And unfortunately, that can be lean muscle. Your body can actually break down your muscle to use for fuel. And if we're not meeting our needs over a long period of time and it becomes like this chronic thing, we're going to lose lean muscle over time. And with that goes strength. We can lose strength, and that can set us up for an injury. Now, the type of carbohydrate, let me move myself out of the way. Now, the type of carbohydrate, there's 2 of them. There's complex carbs and there's simple refined carbs. I often hear people say that complex carbs are the good carbs and refined carbs are the bad carbs, but we're not using that language here, right? We're trying to get rid of that way of thinking. And I will say that as a dietitian, there will be times, and I will say this now, there will be times when I would recommend to you to go more for the simple refined carbs and to avoid those complex carbs. I hope I said that right. To go for the refined simple carbs and to avoid the complex carbs. Like, right, what I said about the high fiber cereal. Like, when we have less than an hour to eat and digest before a run, we're not going to eat a whole bunch of fiber. We want to eat low to no fiber, and those are our refined simple carbohydrates. Focus on those complex carbs at meals and snacks. Totally fine. Fiber is actually really healthy and is like a workout for your digestive tract, keeps it nice and healthy, can help lower your cholesterol, etc. So they're not good or bad. They each have a place in your nutrition. And then I'm showing you this just, some people like numbers, some people don't, but this is a takeaway that I want you to get from this. And this is the sports nutrition guidelines for athletes and for runners. So when you look at this, on the left-hand side in pink here is your daily carbohydrate requirements in grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight per day. And your exercise is over here. As you can see, as we go down this column here, we're increasing exercise duration and we're increasing the intensity of exercise. And as you can see over here, the more exercise we're doing, when we increase the intensity of that exercise, our carbohydrate needs increase. So just to re-emphasize the fact that when you're running more, when you're doing more exercise, when you're adding your speed work in, know that your daily carbohydrate needs increase. Now, some people ask me, how do I know if I'm eating enough? Like, are there signs? And yes, there are. These are some signs that you're under fueling. Low energy. If you're a female runner, a missing period is a giant red flag, not to be ignored. Hitting the wall during running. You're feeling like you're getting injured a lot. You're getting sick a lot. You're always thinking about food. You're not feeling very well recovered in between. If you check the box for any of these, we got to talk because we got to fix that under fueling. And that's my guess is that's what is going on. Signs of adequate fueling, better energy in your daily life during running. You get your monthly period. Your training is overall progressing. Know that, our training and our journey is not linear. We have ups, we have downs, and that's okay. and that's normal, but our training should overall be progressing, not hitting the wall at all, recovering well, feeling strong and capable. Now, moving on to hydration. Hydration is something that I want you to focus on all week long and not just around your runs. We want to go into all of our workouts, even if it's a short, easy effort, we want to go into that well hydrated. And why that is for all of these beautiful reasons over here. Protects your joints and tissues, regulates your body temp, which is really important, especially that the temps are going up this week. It's going to be really hot tomorrow. It supports your muscles. They're 75% water. It can enhance your performance. So when we see greater than 2% dehydration, that's when we typically see performance decline. I like to break hydration up into 4 steps and chat through each step. Number 1 is your daily hydration. What I want you to do to estimate how many ounces to aim for every single day is take your weight in pounds and chop it in half, and that's how many ounces to aim for. Some people are triggered by the scale. I totally understand that. Don't weigh yourself if it's triggering to you, please. Just estimate what your current body weight is, and then cut that in half. All fluids count, so it doesn't have to be just water. All fluids count. Sip throughout the day. Avoid chugging. There's only so much water your body can absorb at once. So some daily hydration tips. Then once you have that down, now we need to dial in your hydration before, during, and after running. So before running, how much to drink really depends on how long you have to your workout. We don't want you to drink a liter of fluid and then go out and run 10 minutes later, right? It's not going to feel good. You're probably going to get side stitches. To be honest with you, these are what our guidelines say, our sports guidelines here. But as a runner myself, I don't really measure. I just make sure to hydrate. I make sure to be intentional. I make sure to sip, in the morning, have a cup or so with my pre-run nutrition. So that's what I want you to focus on. Also, if you have, let's say tomorrow, it's going to be really hot out, right? Tomorrow you have a speed workout, or maybe you're running like some hard hills. It might be wise, especially if you're a heavy sweater, salty sweater, it might be wise to have some electrolytes before that run to really optimize your hydration before running. Now, hydrating during running, we'll chat about this now and then we'll kind of touch base on it when we talk about during run nutrition. Generally, we want to aim for 14 to 27 ounces an hour, and we definitely want to hydrate when we're running over an hour. But you know your body the best. If you feel good and you want to bring fluids and you feel the best sipping some fluids when runs are less than an hour, please do that. You don't need to suffer. There's no word that you'll get if you don't bring any fluids with you. So honor your body and give it what it needs to feel the best. Also, during running is really based on the individual because we all lose a different amount of sweat when we run. We all lose a different amount of sodium and electrolyte that we lose through our sweat when we run. So we can do something called the sweat test, which I'll share more with you shortly. Just a side note here, drinking plain water, especially during long hot runs, if you're out there running over an hour, that's really dangerous. We don't want to do that. You want electrolytes, especially sodium in your fluids, and I will help you out with that and give you some examples of how you can make sure you're adding sodium to your fluids during running in just a bit. And then step 4, hydrate after running. Our sports guidelines recommend to drink an extra 16 to 24 ounces for every pound you lose during running. But again, if you're triggered by that scale, don't step on that scale. Just be intentional with drinking extra fluids. Make sure you have some electrolytes after your run. Again, more to come on this. I know I keep saying that, but we're going to get to it. I don't really have enough time to chat through this. I wish I could talk to you guys for hours and hours, but I don't have that time. And I know you probably don't want to sit here for hours and hours. But having some sort of system for meal planning, shopping, prepping is important because how are you going to feed your body during the week if you don't have a plan? and if you don't have the groceries to build those runners' plates and snacks. So on my website, I have different master classes. These are 2 blog posts that I recently did on meal planning, prepping. So there's more resources, and I have those on my website if you're interested. Now, we spent a lot of time talking about macronutrients, but what about micronutrients, which you might have heard of, but again, it's a fancy word for our vitamins and minerals. And as runners, we tend to have higher micronutrient requirements of certain vitamins and minerals, and that can maybe put us at risk for micronutrient deficiencies if we're not intentional with what we're eating. I always get questions about supplements because I think when people think of vitamins and minerals, they immediately think of supplements, but I am a food first dietitian, which means that I want to help you fuel with food first. I want to help you try to meet your needs with food first because we get so many benefits from food and so many benefits from eating like one type of food, right? So I'm not against supplements. They definitely have a time and place, and they're definitely very, very necessary in certain cases, but it shouldn't be our first move, especially if we have no blood work done that proves we need a supplement. Certain supplements like iron, for example, if we take it and we don't need it and we're taking large amounts, it's hard for our body to get rid of all that excess iron, and it can reach toxic levels, and it's very challenging to try to help your body go back, resume regular levels. So what you can do is eat a good variety of food. Don't eat the same thing every single day, every single week. Eat a variety, try new foods, eat a variety of colors. And that's what you can do to really support your micronutrient needs. Now, we talked about mindset, right? We talked about daily nutrition, and our last piece today is running nutrition. So, running nutrition, nutrient timing is a very fancy word for nutrition before, during, and after running. So, we're being very strategic with our nutrient intake before, during, and after running to enhance our performance, to help us feel good and energized, and to help us recover. What I'm going to go over with you in this section, these are the general sports nutrition guidelines, but know that they're not individualized to you. So your job is to take the guidelines, and maybe it could take a little bit of trial and error, but figure out what is best for you and your body. If you need help individualizing your nutrition to you, I'm here to help you. But just keep that in the back of your mind that these are general guidelines, and figuring out what works the best for you is really important. So pre-run nutrition, we touched upon this when we talked about our snacks. So when we are running or when we are working out less than an hour and we have less than an hour to digest, remember that we want to aim for those low fiber carbs. But know that if we're working out over an hour, that little packet of applesauce, that one banana, that's not going to sustain you and really support your body through those longer efforts. Something to think about is increasing your nutrition, especially your carbs before running, but also letting your body digest. And I get this maybe question a lot about, I don't want to wake up at 3 a.m. and then eat this giant breakfast and then wait hours to digest and then do my long run. I'm a runner. I totally get that. It's not what I do, but I have some tricks that I will share with you about how you can increase your carbs without going and waiting so long to digest before you run. So when you're running over an hour, you want to aim for 1 gram of carb per kilogram of body weight before running. Your breakfast should be really carb rich. We can add some protein in there, but we want to make sure that we're not eating 20 grams of protein and 10 minutes later heading out the door. It's probably not going to feel good. Your body needs longer to really digest that protein. So for an 170-pound runner who is 77 kilograms, they really want to aim for at least 77 grams of carb. And this is what that looks like here. So like a Kodiak cake waffle, a cup of Gatorade, some maple syrup, and a banana. This is something, so all of your long runs, you really should take advantage of nailing all these pieces down. So pre-run nutrition, it's time to start playing around with what breakfasts and combos and digestion timing, what works for you. And if things don't work, make swaps. You have plenty of time between now and race day, but don't get to like race week, and I've had this happen, don't get to race week, freak out and message me or send me an email because you don't know what to have for breakfast. This is something to think about now and something to play around with now. Okay, so here is an example of I don't want to wake up at 3 a.m. and eat a giant breakfast and then wait to digest and whatever. Your pre-run nutrition is still doable. Um, and you're still able to take in higher amounts of carbs, but you just got to get creative with it. So if you don't have a lot of time between when you wake up and when you go for your long run, it's still possible to fuel well. And what I encourage you to start thinking about is what are some carb-rich liquids? And I listed some here: Tailwind, Scratch, super high carb, apple juice even. What are some carb-rich liquids that you can pair with a small snack? Graham crackers, waffle, banana. These don't take long to digest. I'd still give yourself about an hour to see if that timing works for you or maybe less works for you. It's very individualized based on your body, but play around with it, kind of get creative. Now, during run nutrition, there are 3 parts here that we need to build into your long run and racing plan. These are all things that you're going to want to think about now. And really, I'm running the Richmond half. So I'm already mapping these things out and I'm already taking advantage of every single long run to practice my racing plan. So carb, fluids, sodium is really what you want to build into your plan. Create it, practice it, make adjustments, practice it again. We want you to get to race day with a plan that you know you do well with, a plan that you know like the back of your hand, and you're just ready to do it again. So figure out where you're at as I share all these different guidelines with you. Where are you at? Know what you need, set some goals, and then work on slowly building up over time. So for carbohydrates, we want to fuel with carbohydrates when we run. Low fiber carbs and sugar is best. No, we do not need to be afraid of sugar. Sugar is in our goos. Sugar is in our Gatorade. It's in our sports products for a reason. It's because your body can break down sugar and convert it to energy very quickly. And when you're running, your body is at high demand for energy. And carbohydrates, your body can use that most efficiently for energy, not fat, carbohydrates. When you're running, you also have less blood flow to the digestive tract. So you and I are sitting here right now and we have blood flowing to our digestive tract. But when we're running, some of that blood flow is going to be shunted away to your working muscles to deliver oxygen, to deliver nutrients, to keep your muscles in your body working and your body going. Because there's less blood flow to your digestive tract, your digestion is slowed. So things that are, low fiber foods, which are up here. We have some sugary sports products. All those things work really well for during run fuel. And you get to decide. Some athletes that I work with, they like food for fuel. Some like only sports products. Some like a mixture. So figure out what works well for you. I know for me, I've tried like chews, I've tried beans, and I will be honest with you, I hate, and I found this out through trial and error, I hate chewing when I run. I'd rather drink some carbs, I'd rather like take down a goo real quick, move on and be done with it. So that's what I've learned about me. Learn and see if you can find out your preferences as well. On the half marathon course, there's going to be goo available at mile 5, or excuse me, it says mile 7. Mile 7. And then Noon Endurance is a sports drink available at every water station, and I've listed out which miles. There's a junk food stop at mile 9. There's a pickle juice stop at mile 10. But be cautious because if you've never had pickle juice during a run, I don't think I'd play around with that on race day. And if you haven't had, let's say, M&Ms that's at the junk food stop, or if you haven't had gummy bears at the junk food stop, race day is not the time to try it. So just be cautious. I had a bad experience at the Richmond Marathon one year. I stopped at the junk food stop. Never have I ever had candy on my run, and I suffered for the last 6 miles. So sharing this from personal experience, but don't do anything new on race day. How many carbs we want to aim for each hour? And I'll say it's per hour, it's not per mile. So generally, when we're running under an hour, we don't need carbohydrates. But when we're running 1 to 2.5 hours, we definitely want to take in carbohydrates. 30 to 60 or more grams an hour is what we want to aim for. Now, if you're expected to run over 2.5 hours, especially on race day, you need more carb. You're out there running longer, you need more carbohydrate, so you'd be better off at a higher amount of carb per hour. Having carbs in your fluids, like the Noon Endurance, is a really great sports drink because it's got sodium, it's got carb. That sodium and carb is awesome because it will help your body to absorb that fluid better than like just drinking plain water alone. So those are some tips here. And we want to, let's say our goal is 60 grams per hour. Our goal is to take in 60 grams of carbs per hour in the first hour of running. You're not going to feel like you need it, but we definitely want to take advantage and be proactive with our fueling because we don't want to wait till you're an hour and a half in with depleted glycogen stores, feeling horrible, your legs are feeling really heavy, you're like hitting a wall. That's not the time. It's not impossible, but it's going to be really, really hard to really catch up. So we want to get ahead of the game and start fueling early, generally within the first 30 minutes. If you're fueling above 60 grams of carbs an hour, aiming for a blend of carb types can be helpful. So you'll see this is GU, maltodextrin is a carb type, and fructose is a carb type. So these carbs use different absorption transporters. So you're going to be using multiple absorption transporters. You're going to be able to absorb these carbohydrates at a higher amount, and your tolerance will probably be better. So just a little tip. Now, fluids during running, our whole goal is to avoid dehydration, which is when we lose greater than 2% of our body weight during running. If you lose weight during running, which most of us do, it's not true body weight, it's all fluid loss from sweat. We also, during running, don't want to overhydrate, and that's where we see a dangerous condition called exercise-associated hyponatremia. So as you go
tell
throughout
Niam it's time to go. Say bye,
Oops.
Niam.
I think someone needs to mute themselves. Here are some signs of dehydration to be aware of and consequences of dehydration, and then dangers of overhydration, something to be really cautious of. Especially like this is why I say don't just drink plain water. We want some electrolytes, especially sodium in our fluids. So just things to be aware of. So how much fluid should you aim for? Here are our sports guidelines. So when we're running under an hour, we don't necessarily need to take in fluids, but please know your body. If you're more comfortable taking in fluids, please do so. Especially if you're a heavy sweater, salty sweater like me, make sure that you're honoring your body and doing what is best for it. If we're running over an hour, again, we want to aim for 14 to 27 ounces an hour. And just like carbohydrates, we want to be proactive with our fluid intake. We don't want to wait till we're really, really thirsty an hour in to then start hydrating. And again, start practicing now. If you're at, let's say, 8 ounces an hour right now, like you estimate, it's okay. Add a few ounces on. Each long run, add a few ounces. Your body will get better at taking in and absorbing those fluids. Same goes for carbs. If you're doing like 1 gel an hour right now and taking in about 20-ish grams of carb, you got to start somewhere, right? So maybe next time you take one at the 30-minute mark and you take a half 30 minutes later, and then you slowly build up that way. A way to evaluate your hydration during running is to use the scale, which I know isn't appropriate for everyone. So again, if the scale triggers you or makes you feel horrible about yourself, don't have to necessarily do this. And taking a sweat test might be a good idea. But if you're interested and you're okay with the scale and you're interested to see what your hydration is like during running, what you could do is weigh yourself right before running without any clothes on. Put those clothes on and then immediately go out for your run. And then as soon as you get home, take off those heavy, sweaty clothes, towel off if you need to, and weigh yourself again. And then you can calculate like your percent weight change. So if you're losing like 3, 4, especially 5, 6, I've even had a runner lose up 7% of her body weight during running. That's dehydration. That's telling you you're getting way too dehydrated and we need to increase those fluids during running. If you're gaining weight, you're drinking too much fluid. Your fluid intake is here, yet you're only losing down here. So we need to adjust and then repeat again to make sure that you're not going from dehydration to overhydration, right? We want to make sure that we find a good, we want to make sure that we're, in the right spot. Now, electrolytes is the last piece. We lose these electrolytes through our sweat. We lose the most sodium, followed by chloride, potassium, and really small amounts of magnesium and calcium typically. How much fluid you lose, how much sodium you lose, and these other electrolytes during running is really personal to you and your sweat. So some runners, they lose about 200 milligrams of sodium per liter. Some liter of sweat, some runners, it can be up to 2,000 milligrams per liter. So that's like such a wild difference, just to give you an example of what it could look like. Now, our sports guidelines here for electrolytes. When we're running under an hour, not necessary to take in electrolytes, but again, know your body and please do what's best for it. If you are running over an hour, we definitely want to take in electrolytes. Now, the American College of Sports Medicine specifically recommends 300 to 600 or more milligrams of sodium per hour of running. So every single hour you're hitting that. If you're a heavy sweater, if you're a salty sweater, your needs could be on the higher end, closer to 600 to 1,000 milligrams per hour. How do you know if you're a salty sweater? Look at your skin, feel your skin, like after running, during running. Does your sweat taste really salty? Do you have like white stains on your clothes? All of those are signs of salt loss. How to add sodium into your runs. There are lots and lots of products out there, and I love that there's such a variety, but again, it's all about finding what works for you. Noon Endurance, which is available on Chorus on race day, has a pretty decent amount of sodium in it. Tailwind is another option, Scratch Labs, Gatorade Endurance. We can definitely choose higher sodium gels like Kuma Gel Plus. There are salt or electrolyte capsules here we could take. There's chews. So lots of options and lots of ways. But take a look at what fuel you have now. Look at your gels. If you're drinking anything during running, look to see how much sodium it provides. It would be good for you to start investigating that. And then I mentioned sweat testing. Like I said, everyone's losses and needs are so individualized when it comes to fluids and when it comes to electrolytes. So as taking a sweat test is an option if you're interested in like knowing your specific losses and needs and formulating a very specific plan for you. H-strap. Oh my gosh, this was the Ashland half a few years ago and I almost died because it was so hot. And I hope if anyone ran Ashland 5K or half, I hope you had a good race. But this is H-strap here. At this point, I was training for the New York City Marathon, and I wore this because I wanted to figure out what my needs were so that I could put together a very specific plan based on that. Loveland is also another sweat test company. And then here's an example. So we're going to use the products that are on course. GOO is only available at mile 7, and there's no way you're going to be able to meet those hourly carb goals with one gel. So please, please bring extra gels. Please bring even extra gels in case you drop one, which Every time I run a race, I see unopened gels all over the ground. So please don't be that person or bring extra gels so that you don't got to worry about it. And we're going to use noon endurance. Now, the cups available on course are generally about 4 ounces of fluids if you drink the whole thing. So just know that if you're planning to rely on what's on the course, the noon endurance, then it's about 4 ounces, give or take. So here's a sample plan. You want to take 2 gels an hour, and you'll see what this provides. You want to take 3 noon cups per hour from the course, and you want to bring a handheld so you can sip on it in between. So, especially in the first half, like if there's a hydration station every 2 miles and you're doing about 6 miles in an hour, you're only going to be hitting that stop, or you're only going to be hitting 3 hydration stops. If you're taking 1 cup from the course, you're only getting about 12 ounces. So either taking extra cups or bringing a handheld or wearing a vest or however you want to do it could be helpful in getting some more fluids into your body. That provides 64 grams of carb, 595 grams of sodium, and 20 ounces of fluid. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We can check all of those off as goals that we met. So how this would play out in real life is you could take your first gel within the first 30 minutes of the race, take your second gel 25 to 30 minutes later, and continue that throughout the race with a goal of hitting those 2 gels an hour. You could stop at each water station and grab 3 cups an hour. Like that's your ultimate goal. Bring your handheld, take additional sips, about 8 ounces per hour from your handheld in between hydration stations. You can definitely spread that out within the hour. 1 gulp, just so you know, is about 1 ounce of fluid. So that's a sample plan for you. Now, carrying your nutrition, carrying your fluids, it's possible. You just got to get a little creative with it. If you're wearing a vest, lots of pockets. Handheld, this is the guy I'm using now. Huge pocket. I think I can fit about 3 gels in there. A belt, this is a spy belt, so you could put some electrolytes in there. If you take capsules or chews, you can put some gels in there. I take advantage and wear pockets. My shorts have pockets in them, so I can stuff some gels there. If you're really flexible and can reach that arm back, you can put some gels in your bra if it has a pocket. All right, so we talked about before, we talked about during, and now what the heck do you eat after, and how do you fuel your body for recovery? So the goal is to provide your body with nutrients as soon as you can after your exercise. So if we go hours and hours without eating after exercise, that's not good. How is your body going to recover without nutrients? That can hurt your recovery. So the goal is, oops, excuse me, that's my medication. So the goal is, I hope you can't see these, but you probably can. My notifications that pop up. So the goal is to eat a meal as soon as you can after you finish your workout. Or this is what I like to do is have a snack that has carb, protein, drink something with fluids, with electrolytes in it, and then take a shower, cool down, do what I got to do, get ready for my day, and then eat my meal. So I like to do it that way, but feel free to do whatever you feel is best. Also, those electrolytes are really important. We often think of like Liquid IV, Scratch Labs. I'm trying to think of any other electrolyte products that are up there, but we often think of supplements, right? But know that food counts too. And all these foods provide all these different electrolytes. So I'll have you take a look at that. Alrighty. What do you do if you don't have an appetite? A few things you can do here. Again, not eating and not nourishing your body and going hours without eating and waiting until that appetite comes back is not the smartest move. Drink some nutrition. Drink a smoothie. Have a protein drink. Drinking is a lot easier without an appetite than eating is. And it's probably going to be a turnoff if you sit down to a big meal. Don't be afraid of small frequent snacks, grazing. If you can get some carbs and protein in those snacks, great. And then when you can and when you feel ready, have your runner's plate, have your balanced meal. And it's okay. It doesn't mean that you necessarily did something wrong. If you feel extra hungry the day after a long run or the day after having a poor appetite after a long run, just honor your body and eat. Your body's sending you a message. It's saying, hey, I'm hungry. Please feed me. And you should honor it by eating. So don't be afraid if you're extra hungry. You're going to want to honor that. Okay, this is my last slide before we do questions, but I just want to do a quick note on carb loading. There is a misconception or things that I see out there that say you don't need to carb load for a half marathon, you're wasting your time, blah, blah, blah. I recommend carb loading for half marathons, and carb loading can even help you shave minutes off your finish time. So I don't agree with that stuff that's out there. There's lots of nutrition noise out there, and just be careful with what you read, right? The whole point of carb loading is to optimize those glycogen stores, which look at all these benefits here. For a half, I recommend a carb load for 2 to 3 days leading up to the race. The goal for carb loading is 8 to 12 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight per day. You might look at that and say, holy crap, I can never get there. You can. It takes time. It takes a day of practice. So all of these things you should be practicing during your training. Again, even one day of your carb load. See what you like, see what you don't, make adjustments and before you carb load for real before race day. Low fiber carbs is really helpful during a carb load. Carb rich fluids. I know I'm constantly sipping on carbs when I'm carb loading. There might be times when you might not feel hungry for that snack, but like you want to still eat that snack if you can, of course, without being extreme and getting sick, but making sure that you're doing what you can to carb load and meet your goal so that you can experience all these awesome benefits. Okay, I feel like I'm losing my voice. Let me know if you have questions. I don't think I saw any questions come through. Nope, not a one. I know you have questions, so ask me your questions. You can either put them in the chat or if you want to come on and ask me on here. I don't bite and I'm kind, so I'll kindly answer your question. I don't believe that you don't have any questions. Oh, here's one. Oh, Leslie, Coach Leslie, what's your question? She's probably typing away. Can you go back to the types of carbs we should carb load on? Okay, let me answer Leslie's question and then I'll go back. Can you consume too much salt like you can water? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can definitely consume too much salt. So if you're taking in like 1,500 milligrams of sodium per hour and you're don't have any signs of being a salty sweater and you're maybe only losing like a little bit of salt during running, you could definitely overdo it. So that's why I say, like, one, if you're worried about that, get a sweat test. I mean, they are a little expensive, but it's really awesome because then you can feel more confident and go into your race with a plan that you know will help you meet your needs without overdoing it, without underdoing it. Also, think about the signs of a salty sweater. If you don't have any of those, I'm guessing you're not a salty, heavy sweater. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks for asking. Okay, can you go back to the types of carbs we should carb load on? Oh, absolutely. So we talked about carb loading with low fiber carbohydrates. I'm probably going to be clicking for a while. Let me just click back. Bear with me. We're going to get to there. Hydration. Oops, did I go too fast? Oh my God, now it's just going. Hold on, excuse me. Went too far. I think we're almost there. Okay, here's your list. So refined simple carbs, low to no fiber, Think of like your white refined breads and pastas and white rice, graham crackers, fig bars. I'm going off list here. Um, I know potatoes are technically like a complex carb, but potatoes can work really well for carb loading. If you're, I think about carb loading like this. If you are significantly increasing your carb intake to carb load, we don't want to be focusing on all high fiber carbs because there's such thing as consuming too much fiber, which can cause a lot of digestive issues. And like you don't want to do that right before a race, right? So like maintaining your what I like to do is just maintain what I typically hit in fiber, about like 30-ish grams of fiber, but focus more, like if I'm increasing my carb, I'm adding more of the white refined grains and starches. Oh, I'm kind of in the way. Gosh. Okay. So hopefully that answered your question. How to prep for race day, is it different? That's a good question. You know what? So, I mean, with your racing nutrition, you're really practicing each piece of that during your training. You don't want to be under fueling, like for example, during running. It's not like we want you to take less carb during running. I mean, when your long runs get long, right? You want to practice your fueling during running. So if you're running like an hour and 15 minutes, okay, taking like a gel or two is fine. But especially when you get to those long runs, you're going to want to practice that exact the timing, the amounts of carbs, all of that. So take advantage of all of your long runs and you'll really be practicing your racing nutrition plan. Same with like your carb load plan. You should practice a day, just one day, practice a day of that. Practice your breakfast before long runs. That can turn into your race day breakfast. Practice the timing of that. So, really, you're practicing different pieces, and you really should have gone through all the pieces, practiced everything, made all the adjustments, and all of that really turns into your race day plan. Lots of thank yous. You're welcome. Oh, Diana has a good question. For us slow and steady walkers, any tips on being out there for almost 4 hours? Yeah. You're going to be out there for a while, right? So you need even more carb. So I would really aim for closer to that 60 to 90 gram per hour mark. See what you feel is best for you during training. Not every runner necessarily can or will get up to the 90 grams, but somewhere in there. But you still want to hydrate, you still want to fuel. Um, I'm curious, do you walk the whole half or are you run walking? I'd love to know that part.
We do have a walking team, so they may be walking.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. But yeah, you're not going to want to go 4 hours without walking the whole half. Okay, that's amazing. I didn't know you had a walking team. I love that. So, yeah, you're still going to want to fuel. You're still going to want to hydrate. I mean, maybe your losses aren't going to be as high. It depends on how fast you're walking, right? I mean, when I walk sometimes, if I'm like at a really fast pace, then I lose sweat. I'm a salty sweater, so I would take in electrolytes as well. Let me know if you have any questions on that. Linda said recovery mixes like scratch recovery have a bunch of sugar in them. What is the purpose of that? Is that needed if you're fueling properly during the run? So, the purpose of that, I'm guessing, is to help you replenish your glycogen stores after running. Because again, after long runs, your glycogen stores are going to be depleted. So it has sugar. I mean, it doesn't have like, tons and tons and tons of sugar. It has some sugar, but that's okay. That can help you replenish your glycogen stores. Do you need to eat sugar throughout the whole rest of the day? No, right? We need to focus on balanced meals, snacks, all of that, right? But having a recovery drink like that with some sugar in it, it's not something to be afraid of. So even if you're fueling really well during the run, and I would say, especially if you have a poor appetite after running, that could be helpful, especially if maybe let's say you live like 45 minutes away and you're driving home, or you have these stops to make before you get home from your run. That could be a helpful way to start replenishing your glycogen stores, and then you can follow that up with a meal. Okay, awesome. Oh, good. Okay, I'm just reading all your comments. Do we need to prep the night before with carb loading? Yep. For a half? Yep. We want to carb load for 2 to 3 days leading up to the race, and we want to practice 1 day of that during training. So you'll be carb loading for 2 to 3 days before, and that would include that dinner the night before. Now, I will say that a lot of people make the mistake of shoving their mouth with as much pasta as totally, as they can fit, and stuff themselves to the brim the night before a race, and I wouldn't suggest that. Have your carb-rich meal the night before the race. You don't need to like pack it in. Stop when you're comfortably full. Because when you're eating like tons and tons and tons like that to carb load for a race, which isn't really carb loading, like I remember in sports growing up, like we'd all get together and we eat like a ton of pasta and we'd call that carb loading, which it's not. It's just eating a big meal that has a lot of carbs. But don't like push it the night before the race. Stop when you're full. If you need a little snack before bed, great. But you don't need to push it and cause any sort of GI issues during the race, of course. Caroline, can you eat junk food snacks like Oreos when you're doing the carb load to achieve 8 to 12 grams per kilogram per day? If you want, because carbs are carbs, but like I had someone ask me that same question about like Pop Tarts. Like, can I eat 10 packets of Pop Tarts? And my question is, will it make you feel good? Probably not. So like eat your regular meals and snacks. If you want to throw a few Oreos in there, fine. Go ahead and do that. That's totally fine. Okay, those are amazing questions. Anyone else before we sign off? I want to go back to this last slide. I so appreciate you being here. I appreciate you learning about your body's needs as a runner. I appreciate you asking all your questions. So I hope that this was helpful. I want to go back just to the slide with my email, because if you have questions, here's my email. If you have questions that you didn't ask today that you think of later, I always do that. Pop me an email. Follow me on Instagram if you'd like. I post like every day training tips, nutrition tips. If you want to check out my website, check me out here. So, um, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint emailed to us? I will send the slide deck to Mara and have her do what she wants to do with that.
We'll post a recording and the slide deck on the HMTT website probably next week.
Okay, great. Good. Well, thank you.